Ottawa, the Liberal government's crackdown on tax cheats has proven to be a smashing success, according to the Prime Minister, anyway. Read more. Paradise Papers. Did Canada actually make it easier to stash money offshore? Our investments have already yielded results. We are on track to recuperate $25 billion from our efforts against tax avoidance and tax evasion, said Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said on November 6. The depth of Canada's tax evasion and avoidance problem erupted in overwhelming detail last week with the release of a trove of documents about offshore accounts and trusts, dubbed the Paradise Papers, that delivered a broadside to the Prime Minister's oft-repeated mantra of creating a fairer tax system for the middle class and its hard-working aspirants. Trudeau responded with a haymaker of his own. The government had identified and was on track to collect $25 billion in unpaid taxes over the last 2 years. His intended message was clear: Canada won't turn a blind eye to those who cheat on, or otherwise go to extreme lengths to avoid paying their taxes. But did the government cheat on its numbers? Read more. Here are the Canadians most likely to get a tax audit this year. Spoiler alert: the Canadian Press Baloney Meter is a dispassionate examination of political statements culminating in a ranking of accuracy on a scale of no baloney to of baloney. Complete methodology below. This one earns a rating of a lot of baloney. Here's why. The facts. The Prime Minister made two statements on November 6, the first day that the fallout from the Paradise Papers hit the House of Commons. During question period, Trudeau first said the government had identified $25 billion in unreported income. A few minutes later, he said the government was on track to recuperate $25 billion from our efforts against tax avoidance and tax evasion. Read more. Alberta couple that used natural person tax evasion philosophy sentenced in the 201,617 fiscal year, which ended March 31. The agency targeted $8 billion in foregone taxes from large businesses, including about $1.8 billion flagged as stemming from tax avoidance or evasion. There was also $2.6 billion identified as unpaid GST and HST, and a further $1.6 billion in possible unpaid taxes from small businesses. The combined value was $12.2 billion. The agency's annual report from the previous fiscal year noted virtually identical figures in each category, and a similar total $12.2 billion, for a two-year total of $24.4 billion, nearly all of the $25 billion cited by Trudeau. Watch no timeline for CRA pursuing offshore tax cheats. Qualtriff. The figure represents the extra revenue the government should have collected, said Ted Gallivan, Assistant Commissioner of International, Large Businesses, and Criminal Investigations Branch. It usually crosses multiple tax years and can be calculated upon existing taxpayer balances, he said. For really high-value balances, the CRA may make accommodations to collect the balance over time so a business doesn't go bankrupt, meaning the debt lasts for a while, Gallivan added. The figures for the last 2 fiscal years are not out of line with the preceding 2-year period. Agency reports show auditors identified $20.5 billion in unreported tax between April 2013 and March 2015. Read more. Tax evasion prosecutions in Canada fall dramatically in their 2016 budget. The Liberals gave the Canada Revenue Agency $444.4 million over 5 years to go after tax cheats, expecting it to result in the collection of $2.6 billion in previously unpaid taxes. This year's budget added $523.9 million over 5 years, aimed at recouping $2.5 billion in revenues. The net result: the government expected to come out of all that spending $4.13 billion ahead. The experts. When the government cites the $25 billion figure, they're referring to how much auditors have identified as problematic, not how much officials will collect in the end, said Dennis Howlett, CEO of the advocacy group Canadians for Tax Fairness. It includes years of unpaid taxes that were only recently identified. What's more, the final figure can change, since the government can settle out of court and discount any penalties without making the details public. Watch. Federal government aiming to close income tax loopholes. Hussein Warsame, an accounting professor and the CPA fellow in taxation at the University of Calgary, said the government will likely collect about half of what it expects, or even less once the cost of employee time, legal fees and other expenses are factored in. That $25 billion is not what the government is going to get, Warsame said. Well over 90% of the approximately 80,000 appeals of Canada Revenue Agency audits filed each year are settled before they ever go to court, said Jeffrey Loomer, a tax law professor from Dalhousie University in Halifax. Read more. Ottawa cracks down on offshore tax evaders, requests records from 3 banks. Most of the $25 billion in question would likely be wrapped up in those appeals, he said. Of that amount, overseas tax evaders are a small percentage. Most are people like restaurant owners who neglect to collect GST, or contractors who fudge their income on their tax returns. Loomer say the verdict: the government is no doubt recouping some of its losses from tax cheats and avoiders who hide their money offshore. But are they going to collect all $25 billion? Unlikely, say experts. There is definitely some truth to what they're claiming, but they're prone to exaggerating a bit and they're fuzzy about different terms, Howlett said. Watch opposition want names of 4 Liberal MPs identified of using tax loopholes. That's why this statement receives a rating of a lot of baloney. The $25 billion number might be accurate, but the chances the government will recoup all of it are remote at best. Contrary to Trudeau's claim, the government is on track to recover all of it. The Prime Minister was largely correct when he characterized the $25 billion as unreported income, but he overreached moments later by declaring the government was planning to recover the same sum. Methodology: the baloney-meter is a project of the Canadian press that examines the level of accuracy in statements made by politicians. Each claim is researched and assigned a rating based on the following scala. No baloney, the statement is completely accurate. A little baloney, the statement is mostly accurate but more information is required. Some baloney, the statement is partly accurate but important details are missing. A lot of baloney, the statement is mostly inaccurate but contains elements of truth. Full of baloney, the statement is completely inaccurate. Copyright 2017 The Canadian Press.